Hello everyone, it's History Behind the Warrior, and welcome back to another missing and lost history of video, where we talk about a lesser known character from the MK mythos, their creation, what happened to them, and what influence did they have to the series moving forward. Now, seeing as last week we did cover the god of chaos, Zagat, the embodiment of chaos, and someone that made everyone that has dyslexia feel bad about themselves, I thought that today we could spill on the other side of the spectrum and talk about the lost and forgotten god of order, Abacus. Now keep in mind that unlike previous videos, this one is designed to be more of a straight up sequel to the Zagat video, as these two characters are incredibly interlinked and tied to one another. Thus, there's a lot of similarities and crossovers, and I will be touching on certain elements that I did mention in the previous video. But the premise and world building that actually does surround Abacus makes him an extremely unique deity to the MK universe, even in the new era and current present, because Abacus would be the one and only time an Order god was mentioned in the series, not having returned later down the line, but having paved a legacy that would take fruition in the 3D era of games. So how did this all come to be? Well, just before we get right into that, here's a quick reminder as always that if you like what we do here and wish to see more, please don't forget to subscribe as well as give this video a thumbs up. It's a really small thing, but it does go a momentous way in helping support the channel, so if you could do that, I would super appreciate it. Anyway, let's delve right into things. Now, to tackle Abacus is a really tricky situation, because canonically he isn't tied to the mainline series of games, but instead a spin-off comic of yet another spin-off comic book series, more specifically the Malibu comic book line. Created during the early 90s of MK's infancy, the series itself was yet to really kind of flesh itself out. It was still building its world and its foundations and characters, making it really flexible how characters could be interpreted. And that's where the Malibu comic book shined. And with many spin-off forms of the medium like movies, Broadway shows, and spin-off games, the entire Malibu line itself would have its own interpretation of the series, being overlooked by creative visionary John Tobias, who would help spearhead many of the creative ideas. And this would of course include the likes of Abacus and Zagat, original characters made for this era and confined within the Prince of Pain run. So what exactly do we know of Abacus? Well, in terms of where we place him on the timeline, where he was born and or created, then it would be at the dawn of time itself. Whilst not strictly disclosed, it is revealed that Abacus does predate that of Shao Kahn, as well as Earthrealm's guardians and gods. Thus, if we were to plot him somewhat on this timeline, it would have either just to have been at the dawn and creation of the Elder Gods, or just after the One Being's defeat, as his defeat would lead to the creation of the Order and Chaos realm. But keep in mind, the One Being didn't even creatively exist at this point in time, as that was something implemented during the 3D era. We'll get to that a little bit later on. So in terms of canon and continuity, at the point of Abacus's debut, he's a very ancient deity and being, one that tethers on that of a primordial level, even if he does brand himself as a god. Because if his brother Zagat is anything to go by, seeing as they are identical twins of each other, then that means that Abacus is a creator level being, being able to cast, forge and make anything that comes to mind, possibly even beckoning on that of limitless power. But that's the interesting thing about both Abacus and Zagat. They aren't just so much gods or primordials, but they are the physical embodiment of order and chaos. The power constantly fluctuates due to the nature of their abilities, so the two are never on an even playing field. So as more order is cemented, the greater and stronger Abacus does become over time, something that naturally his brother does detest. So the two have always been at odds with each other since the dawn of time, battling against one another on the higher plane. However, unlike Zagat, who freely roams into whatever realm he wishes, as they have unique realm traveling abilities, Abacus has an entire domain to himself. A reality on a higher level that serves as a heaven of sorts. Whilst it's not dubbed as the Order realm, it is a reality of his own making, dubbed as the Library of Order. But the library itself is very, very unique, and in my opinion, does actually rival the Hourglass with the amount of value behind it. You see, the library itself isn't just simply Abacus's domain, his home and reality, but the book on each shelf is designed to represent a different life, a different person's story from beginning to end. making Abacus's role quite vital in that regard, because it's implied that he oversees these stories, to let the thread unravel as he overlooks this reality, thus making him an incredibly pivotal figure here, even if his time in the Prince of Pain run is extremely brief. So what exactly happens during this comic book run? Well, during this 3-issue miniseries, where Zagat has surfaced on the mortal plane, planning to use the chaos caused by the tournament as a way to overthrow and besiege Outworld and Shao Kahn, even creating the likes of the combatant. This disruption in the natural order would catch the wary gaze of Abacus, and from watching the madness he was making, from attacking Outworld to defeating Goro, Abacus decides that it would finally be time to intervene, and reveals to him the true purpose behind Zagat, why he's besieging the realms, whilst he himself has no interest in stepping onto the mortal plane, as it would only cause more chaos. He would have a plan in mind, handing Goro a weapon that could completely demolish the combatant, something that the Shogun Prince relishes in. And it would actually be the time that Goro spent with Abacus that allowed him to defeat Zagat. By knowing of the true nature of the Chaos God's desires, by the prince not engaging with him in one-on-one combat, it causes him to shrink as he cannot manifest chaos, then leading to the prince actually consuming the god. And by the end of the actual comic book run, we do actually get to see Abacus and Zagat play against each other in chess, a somewhat symbolic representation of this small 3-part mini-issue series, where they're placing players across the board in order to outdo the other. Now, in terms of actual canonical appearances, this would be the last time we ever see Abacus in Mortal Kombat, as he's not heard from again or spoken about in the main continuity. Hell, not even during the 3D trilogy. Because unlike the Chaos Realm, which used Zagat effectively as the building bones and skeleton, Abacus seems to be completely absent here. In fact, there looks to be little to no influence from the Order God here, because never at any point in time do we ever hear or learn of a God of Order, or see it be reflected in its world, culture, or characters. There is no library of order, only a strict perception of control, with a government that rules with a bloody iron fist. If anything, the existence of Abacus kind of feels like it's been scrubbed from MK's history, as there's very little to nothing that does homage the character, sadly making him yet another casualty of being a comic book exclusive character. And I think that's where the large differences between Abacus and Zagat kind of appear. Because whilst both are confined to that medium, it is at the very least hinted at that Zagat may have been responsible for causing the Chaos Realm to be the way it is, by causing what is known as the Cataclysm, an event where a Chaos God exploded and littered the lands with his chaos and madness. For Saido though, no such thing has occurred. I mean, hell, the Order Realm was given a name, and it isn't even Abacus. So sadly, he's just one of those many characters that has slipped through the cracks over the many decades. However, with the new era in swing, it does make the sliver and possibility of Abacus returning very much so possible. But in its current state, I don't see it being particularly too high. So with that said and everything covered here, this has been it for the lost and forgotten God of Order, Abacus. And I really do sincerely hope you enjoyed this episode. I do find it very fun and very entertaining to tackle these lesser known characters, especially when they're tied beyond the main continuity. It lets me touch some material that I've never quite approached. And Abacus is most certainly one of those characters I'd really like to see them expand upon in the future. So with that said, down in the comments below, please tell me what are your thoughts on Abacus as well as Zagat. Would you like to see them get some real character or maybe even a spot on the main roster? Please do comment down below. But for now everyone, that has been it for me. So as always, stay strong, stay well, and I'll catch you in the next one.